Hi, it's Sandy Wyllie. Welcome to my mental health channel, You Got This, where I wipe away the stigma of mental illness by talking about my own personal experiences as a former patient of almost 20 years, having borderline personality disorder. I talk about post-traumatic stress disorder, anxiety and depression, narcissism, schizophrenia, and a plethora of other mental health topics. But I only talk about them as a former patient. I am not a licensed therapist. I do not hold a degree in psychology, so I cannot give you a professional opinion or a diagnosis. The only thing I ask of you in return is to please be kind and considerate in the comments. Be kind to me, be kind to other people who comment, and be kind to yourself. If you're new to my channel, welcome! If you like what you see, just hit that like button. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. There's a little square that says subscribe right there. Now, today's video is really one of a kind. Today I'm going to talk about my father's mental breakdown, his nervous breakdown. He had several when he went to McLean's Hospital. I never talked about this ever with anyone, okay? I never even talked about this in my therapies. And I've been in therapy for almost 20 years with dozens of different psychologists. So I never even discussed it with anyone. So this is this is the first time. So please bear with me. I'm sorry if I say things that, come across as harsh or, too explicit or too graphic, or if it offends you or puts you off, I'm really sorry. Now, it's so difficult because, I've never talked about this with anyone before. But my father had a complete nervous breakdown. My father is a paranoid schizophrenia. I'm not going to go too much into detail about that because I've talked about that on other videos. He's delusional. He's heard voices. He hallucinates. He goes into psychotic rages. The voices tell him to do things. And I've never known my father to be a violent man. And he never was a violent man to me. But this last nervous breakdown before he died, he got extremely violent. My father was feeling good. And a lot of people who have mental illness, when they're on medication, start to feel good on the medication and think, you know what, I'm doing really well. I don't need my medication anymore. It's not just with schizophrenics. It could be with any kind of mental illness, okay? If you have a mental illness, not everyone, and you're on medication, you're seeing a psychiatrist for that mental illness, and the medication is working well, you might think that you're cured. My father did. And that you don't need the medication anymore to function, that you're fine now, you're cured, and you don't need the medication. There's certain mental illnesses like schizophrenia that you're never cured. It's just managed through medication, okay? So my father was never going to be cured of schizophrenia. He was only going to be managed through the medication. Like my son has traumatic brain injury from pneumococcal meningitis, okay? He's never going to be cured. He has extensive brain damage. He's an invalid. But if he didn't take the heavy doses of medication, he's on heavy medication he takes 3 times a day. If he didn't take that, he'd have to be strapped in one of those suits in a mental hospital. What do they call those? The old age is catching up on me. Where they strap a patient. He would not be able to function because he'd be violent. And that's how my father was. He became violent off the medication. Now, it didn't happen overnight, okay? He said he was feeling fine. He went off the medication, and then he started hearing voices again. One time I was coming home, and it was the middle of winter, and I saw my father we live in the city, in a busy street with lots of, restaurants and real estate agencies and like laundromats and dry cleaners. It's a city. I live in Boston. And there he was standing in one of the storefronts with nothing on but his underwear. He had nothing else on but his underwear. And this was in the winter, and he's out in public in the street where everyone can see him. So I was getting a little concerned. People tried to talk to him, tried to get him to, go back on this medication. By then he's too far gone to even, to even notice that he needs any help. And then shortly after that, the next time, like police cruisers were surrounding my house. My father went after my mother with a knife. He tried to kill her. This is the first time I'm sharing this with anyone. I never even told people, psychologists in my therapy sessions. So the police, of course, brought him in, and he had to be, against his will, brought to McLean's Hospital in Belmont and put in a locked up ward for mental patients. This ward had, you couldn't, it was locked. You couldn't just walk into it. You had to have a designated appointment, and if I wanted to see my father, and they'd have to escort you. And they strip you of everything. You can't have a razor, you can't shave. They strip you of all your possessions. So of course it was, it was really, really frightening to me. My son was in a hospital for 2 years because of his brain damage, and now here my father is in a hospital with severe, having a complete breakdown, trying to kill my mother. Even though I hated my mother, and you all know I've done videos, I was glad that my mother died and all of that. Even though I hated her, I would never want anyone to be, stabbed to death. My God, especially, my father, and I loved my father. I was very close to my father. If you read my books, Life of My Schizophrenic Father. And my father never displayed any of these, any kind of violence, even though I've heard stories that he was very violent. At his funeral, I heard stories from my uncle. He told me that one time he was upset with him and he took a big baseball bat and he smashed his whole car. But, I never seen my father act like that. So, when I hear these stories, it's like, I really can't accept it, and it's like someone you love. I don't know if any of you have had this experience, this horrific, like I have, and you really love the person. The person has never shown any harm to you, never raised his voice to me, never hit me, nothing, We used to go to the beach together all the time. We used to go out for, Italian food all the time. We used to go, to the races, the horse track. He never displayed any kind of, aggressive, violent behavior with me. So when I'm hearing other people tell me these things, it's very hard for me. It's very hard for me to hear this because, it's hard when you love someone. It's extremely hard. I'm sorry. But I know this is a, very graphic video. A lot of people might be turned off by this. I'm sure I'm not going to get any likes. I'm sure everyone is going to hate this video. But I felt like I needed to come on here. I needed to share with you about mental illness. It can happen to anyone, and when it happens to someone you love dearly, it's just, it's heart-wrenching. That's what it is. It's totally heart-wrenching. When I was a little girl, my father had a mental breakdown too. He just, again, stopped taking his medication, and he was rolling all over the floor. He couldn't function. He wasn't working. He was out of work. He was drinking heavy. He was gambling he was a gambler, and he gambled all his money. So he had no money. He had no job. He had no place to live. And he was just completely delusional, hearing voices. Schizophrenia is one of the most severe forms of mental illness out there. I don't know if every person with schizophrenia is violent. Just like I talked about borderline personality in my other videos, and I told you, not every borderline self-harms themselves or harms other people, But in that case, it was extremely hard, that the police surrounding my house had to bring him a straitjacket. Oh, jeez. Remember before when I was talking about that bodysuit that you're strapped in? It's a straitjacket. Yeah. He was put in a straitjacket and led in, and they stripped him of everything, He couldn't have anything. They don't allow you to have anything, because anything that you have could be used to harm yourself or to harm someone else. And he died of cancer. I mean, it just ate his whole body away. It was horrific, and it was a horrific experience. But all my life he had mental illness, and that time when he had that complete breakdown and almost killed my mother, that was really tough. That was really tough. Sometimes I wonder, how I even got through any of it. And I really don't have an answer for you on that. It's not like I had a choice, It's not that I'm strong, because I'm not strong. I'm a weak person. I didn't have a choice. It was like, here's what you're dealt with in life, Here's your father, here's your mother, or here's your son gets a severe illness that wipes his mind out. And he would have to be put in a straitjacket too if he wasn't on heavy medication that he takes 3 times a day. He would be killing people and going after people too. That's why he's on. But he has no control of that because he is an invalid and has a mind of it like a 2-year-old. Whatever they give him, he takes. He has to take. My father had a choice. My father had free will. He had a choice before he was almost killed my mother and put in a mental hospital. He had a choice because he was an adult whether he would take, his medication or not. Where my son, because we're his guardians, and people, he does not have a choice, he doesn't have an adult mind, so he can't make adult choices, We're his guardians, and, people watching over him, taking care of him. He can't say, I don't want my medication. He'll, he can't make that choice. I never was big on medication, but sometimes people need medication, as in the case with my father and my son. I saw what happened to my father when he was off his medication, He needed that medication for the rest of his life. Even when he felt he didn't need it, that it, was good, that he was fine, he was fine because he was on the medication, that the medication was doing what the medication was supposed to do, But it's hard, to make people see that. He just didn't see that. He just said, because the medication, he told me he hated taking it because it dulled everything down. He said it was like, like this wet, heavy, thick blanket over his head. It dulled, it dulled everything down. Who wants to go through life like in a haze, like walking through a fog? He said, like everything is dulled down, like a thick, heavy blanket covering your head, you know? Um, no one wants to live like that, but but look at the alternative. Being locked up, almost killing your wife. Um, you have no possessions. They strip you of everything, and, you know, see, that's the alternative. Unfortunately, some people need medication, and some people need to stay on their medication for the rest of their lives. That's just how it is. That's the reality of it. I'm sorry again if this video was very depressing for you, but I felt that, you know, my channel, I need to come on, I need to be honest, I need to be open about these experiences so people can see, you know, and, you know, that, hey, you're not alone out there, you know, you're not.